Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the Minister of Justice previously about the problems facing legal aid, and the Minister has responded by pointing the finger at other levels of government or previous administration, but defence lawyers currently have their fingers pointed squarely at the Minister. Calgary defence lawyers are open to meeting with this government to discuss this in good faith, but warns that the situation is dire enough that they're considering a strike action. To the Minister of Justice, will you commit to meeting with these lawyers and attempt to resolve this issue before things get worse?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think the first thing to note here is that stating that legal aid has historically been underfunded is not intended to blame anyone. It's simply a statement of fact. Mr. Speaker, that's why when our government took over, we took this issue very seriously, and we have increased funding to legal aid by close to 40%, Mr. Speaker. We absolutely are in negotiations for a new governance agreement, Mr. Speaker. We meet regularly with the Defence Bar, Mr. Speaker, in terms of that governance, and we will continue to have those conversations.
First supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that court slowdowns caused by strike action would not only have a negative impact on those seeking justice, but would also likely end up costing the government more money in the long run. And given that this government has spoken at length about the need to invest in the future as justification for borrowing, to the same Minister, a healthy legal aid program is like a vital piece of infrastructure for our justice system. Why are you shortchanging this one program?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and to the member for the question. Well, I think the member's statement is fairly inaccurate, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely the case that legal aid has received a greater increase in funding percentage-wise than anything else in my department, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely correct that we continue to need to invest in legal aid. That's a critical service. But many of the other services in my ministry are also critical services, Mr. Speaker, and we have to continue to invest in those as well.
Second supplemental.
Given that court times and a responsive justice system are threatened by the troubles facing legal aid, and given that the expectation of a fair and timely trial is both a right regardless of personal wealth and encourages participation in the justice process for both offenders and victims, and given how crucial public trust is for this process to succeed, to the same Minister, how will you ensure that your conflict with defence lawyers and legal aid won't erode public trust in our justice system?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we have regular conversations with all participants in the justice system to ensure that we're responding to the Jordan decision and, Mr. Speaker, to underfunding from the government of which that member was a member. Mr. Speaker, it's the case that we've worked very closely with the Defence Bar. For instance, the CTLA here in Edmonton had advocated to have defence lawyers at bail hearings, and, Mr. Speaker, we've heard that call and we've responded accordingly.